Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Bible Catholic channel here on YouTube. My name is William Hemsworth, and thank you for joining me for this live show with our special guest. Always a pleasure to talk with Bill Snyder. Bill is the founder of Patchwork Heart Ministry, and they just released a fabulous new book, "Our Hearts Are Burning Within Us." Bill, how are you doing today?
William, it's awesome to be with you as well, man. Thank you so much. I'm doing great.
Oh, thank you. And for our audience, if you see any freezes or anything, please forgive us. I had some bad storms last night, so we're going to do the best we can here. All right. But Bill, before we get to the book, and congratulations again on it, can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and maybe how Patchwork Heart started?
Yeah, so quickly, Patchwork Heart Ministry started really in 2012 when I was at a youth conference. And the Holy Spirit said, Bill, start a ministry. And I was like, I'm not really qualified. I'm just a little humble youth minister. And he really encouraged me throughout the course of that day, just kept prodding me to start this ministry. I had no idea what I was doing. But he gave me the name Patchwork Heart because I said, if you give me a name, I'll start the ministry. And so that's how it came to be. It was blogging and podcasting and all kinds of things for many years. And then most recently in 2018, what ended up happening was we founded as a nonprofit and made things a little bit more formal. And since then, I've kind of taken over, full time in the ministry and working to really build the kingdom of God and, author books and blog and do radio shows and TV shows like this one and really spread the gospel. So it's great to be with you. And that's, really what our mission is, to sow hope into broken hearts and reach into those young souls. I like to think of ourselves as divine physician assistants, just kind of pointing people toward the way of Jesus, who can heal those broken hearts and then empower those people to go out and live the Catholic faith boldly and then become divine physician assistants themselves.
Okay. Can you tell the audience a little bit about the productions that you all do on a weekly basis and maybe where they can find those?
Sure. So yeah, you can head over to our YouTube channel, Patchwork Heart. If you just search Patchwork Heart Ministry on YouTube, you will find us. And we have a lot of different programs on there each and every week. Twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays, myself and Ann DeSantis host a podcast called Sowing Hope, which is live on YouTube. Many times it's live, but it's always at 6:00 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays Eastern time. And then we also have Young Catholics Respond. I'm on a little bit of a hiatus right now because I was just blessed with a baby boy. So taking a little bit of a hiatus, to kind of settle into being a parent. But that will be back hopefully in the fall and, with new guests and new stuff. So check out our Podbean channel, which is simply patchworkheart.podbean.com. And you can find all our shows and podcasts and whatnot. So we're super excited about that. And I'll give a quick plug to Ann DeSantis as well for her show Journeys in Faith, which is on our network as well. And that will return in the fall too. So check out our YouTube and check out podbean.com.
Great. Yeah, a lot of great stuff there. And congratulations again on being a father. I had the privilege of meeting the little guy a few moments ago before we went live. So that's always a great thing. So yeah, congratulations again. I know it's hard work, but it's the best job ever. So
it's awesome. It is hard work, but it's beautiful. And so I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
So tell us a little bit about your book. I guess, how did it get started? Because that's a fascinating story in and of itself.
Yeah, so actually, really shortly after Patchwork Heart Ministry was conceived in 2012, I think it was like 2013, I sat down at my computer, still at my first job as a youth minister, and I wrote this introduction to the book. And it just sat there from 2012 until now. And I had written it. I had thought, oh, man, it would be really cool one day to be able to take some of these high school seniors that I'm working with and these college freshmen that I'm working with and really talk to them about the questions they have on their heart. And so after I wrote the introduction, though, nothing really materialized. It was always either a conflict of interest or it was just too hard to get started with a group of kids. And so it just happened one afternoon that I was with Ann DeSantis after one of our TV shows or podcasts or whatever it was. And I said, hey, we're in the middle of a pandemic and things have kind of slowed down. I have this introduction to a book that I wrote many years ago. Do you want to take a look at it and just see what you think of it, and just let me know. And so she looked at this, and she was like, immediately, oh, I know how I can do this. I know the people. We can get this done. We can get this started next week. I'm like, okay. So she put us in touch with Maggie Riggins and Jen Southerton, our two other authors for the book, and a bunch of students, and then they pulled a bunch of students from the universities that they work at. So Maggie Riggins at the time was working at DeSales University, and then Jennifer Southerton's out at Lourdes University. And so they gathered a few of their students, and Anne is well connected with Gwen and Mercy because both of her daughters have gone there. And so she pulled students from there, her daughter, and we just came together. We had 5 students from these three different universities, and we talked about the questions that were on their heart. I told them straight up, I said, there is no question that you cannot ask. There's nothing off limits. Whatever is on your heart, whatever burns on your heart. And I think the interesting thing too was when we were discussing this as authors, we had, a pre-author meeting. I said, can we choose students that are, involved and really involved? And can we choose a few that maybe are on the fringes of involvement so that we get a wide range of spirituality within the group? And even though we only had 5, I think it was a perfect size because once you expand beyond that, I think there's too many voices. So, but the interesting thing is when we met each and every week with them, and we kept coming back and saying, okay, do you have a question based on this question? Because what ended up happening is we put this Google Doc together. So we were like, all right, here's this question on this. And then a student would go, well, I got a question about that based on this response. And so it just kind of flowed into 42 different questions that the students really had on their heart. And what I really liked about it, William, was the fact that we really took the time to walk with them through this. It wasn't just like, okay, here are your questions and we're going to write this book and that's going to be it. It was, no, I want to do the ministry aspect of this as we're walking with you through this entire experience. So they felt loved. When we prayed together every single week, we always went around and said, what are the intentions that are on your heart too? So, we were praying for people's grandmothers and all kinds of stuff. And it was wonderful to be able to encounter that in a virtual setting through Zoom during a pandemic. But it was beautiful. And I think all of us left just surprised by Jesus. I mean, I think that's the best way to leave it,
Right. Now, these college students, were these questions that they had, or were they ones asked of them by their peers as well?
I think it's a mix. I think you hear a lot of stuff because they're talking in their own campus ministry programs about this. And then there's also the questions that burn on their heart. But if you're actively involved and you're out there witnessing on your college campus, of course you're encountering questions, and then they brought those into the book. But I think there were also quite a few that were, especially those students that were still in that, seeking stage. They brought the questions that were on their own heart about things, and they were pretty real questions. I mean, these were, from their guts. I like to say they're from their guts. They're not just from their hearts too. There were some hard-hitting questions.
So I guess what would be the difference between this book and say other ones that try to tell parents how to keep their kids Catholic while they're in college? You get what I'm getting at? Yes, I do.
How would your book differ? Well, here's the thing. It's geared for the student, not for the parent. This is for students and, campus ministers too, I would say, to be able to flip through and provide students with solid answers. But this is not like a mandate. There's nothing like, okay, you better go to school and remain Catholic or else. Like, this is geared toward, okay, you know what? I'm in a situation at school. I mean, like, is it okay to underage drink? Is it okay to use marijuana? I mean, these are questions that are in the book, So, a parent saying to their kid, don't drink at school, don't underage drink, don't do marijuana, don't do illegal drugs. It's not coming from that angle. It's coming from, okay, why shouldn't I do this? Is it sinful? Is it this? How do I remain pro-life? How do I, what's the deal with the death penalty? We see so much going on. These are questions that come from their perspective, not from the parental perspective of, okay, I want you to remain Catholic, and here's a great book for you to walk away to school with. No, this is like, pick it up for, I got a question, and it's not another catechism. This is not another educational resource. Does it have church teaching in it? Yes. Is it faithful to the magisterium? Yes. But I also was intentional about including personal stories, personal witness in this book. So it's not just, and then, you know what, let me throw another question at you. Let me throw another, catechism at you. We've already got a great catechism. Let's build upon it, make it relational, so that kids can relate to this.
Yeah, and what I really enjoyed about your book is just it's the questions coming from them themselves. It's not from, like myself, a 41-year-old guy in Tucson, Arizona. It's a kid on the college campus. So that's what I really like about it. And what was the process of condensing all of the answers to their questions into the book? Because you're not writing 100 pages on each question. You're really condensing it, and you're getting the core teaching out. So what was that process like?
That was a fun process. It was a long process. And certainly we sought some great priests to help us with making sure that things were, within the teaching of the church and, aligned with the magisterium of the church. But I think as authors, we were all surprised. And kind of what we did was we met monthly. We said, okay, we're going to work on this section. You're going to work on this section. You're going to work on this section, and just kind of clean things up in the Google document, make it look, like a book. And as we came back together, we would say, oh, you know what, this was so insightful. I think I want to, rephrase this or use this in a different way here. I want to think, use this here, and I want to use that, language there. And so it wasn't just a, again, a cut and dry process. This was very conversational. And let me tell you, there were disagreements too. And that's a beautiful thing. I think oftentimes in our society, we have this, this thing like, okay, you can't disagree with me. Well, there was plenty of disagreement throughout this. There were a few questions in there that were like, oh, you know what? I have a different perspective on this, and you have a different perspective on this. So now let's go examine, and take this to somebody with fresh eyes, and breathe new perspective into it. And so that's what I think the power of this book is, because it's not just something. It's visceral. There's not just something that's another dry catechism. So yeah, I think that's what makes it so appealing to college students, because we wanted to target them. We didn't want to target, their parents.
Right. All right. And Bill, like I said before we went live, you a couple questions that you have in your book. So you ready for a couple?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I'm happy to talk with you about them.
All right. So let's talk about interpreting scripture. This is the first one in the book, and I hear this one a lot from even high schoolers. So the question is, since the magisterium is made up of humans who we know are fallible by nature, how can we know that they are not, even if unintentionally, misguiding the community of faith with possible misinterpretations that may falsely claim to be guided by the Holy Spirit? What does the process look like of accepting dogma as dogma? It's kind of a big question.
It is, and that's the reason why we put it first in the book, because as I say in there, it really is foundational to understanding and believing everything else we write. If the church is what it says it is, and Jesus says, this is the church, it's built on Peter's rock that isn't going to fade away, then we got to prove that. And we've got to stick up for that. So that's the reason why we put it first in the book. But to answer the question, I would just point to, and I do in the book as well, but I would point to the fact that this church has been around for over 2,000 years.
Mhm.
There is no other institution on the face of the planet that does what the Catholic Church does. By the way, it feeds, educates, clothes more people on the planet than any other organization does, and has been doing that for
Amen.
such a long time, right? That proves, and also through all the different storms and scandals, we think we live in a scandalous time, maybe, but there were times in the church where, when we don't have to go into them, that were a lot more scandalous than this. We've had people having 3 different popes, or arguing about which pope was really pope in our church's history. And guess what? The church is still standing. The authentic teachings of the church still stand. So I would say that right there points to the mere fact that this is not driven by men, because anything driven by men is just going to fail. Driven by the Holy Spirit, it remains standing. And look, despite people trying to undermine the church, it has never, ever, ever failed. So that is that. The other thing I'll quickly add about dogma, which I thought was a very interesting question. I remember I was at a talk by Mark Shea, sitting at Marytown, actually, and he said this about dogma. He said, dogma is like the completion of a thought. Once you know 2 + 2 = 4, you don't need to think about it anymore. You've completed that knowing, and you just know it to be true. And so I think when you look at dogma and understanding that as, guess what? These are the basics. This is the very foundation of what we believe. It's 2 + 2 = 4. And nothing else can grow from it unless we believe these things. Then I think, man, that lends itself to really understanding why we should accept dogma, of the church. And it's just the foundations, and we know it to be true. And then we also don't have to waste a lot of time thinking about it anymore. We know it is true, and we just believe it.
In the group of college students that you worked with, was this a question that they all had, or was it just maybe 1 or 2?
I would say 1 or 2 of them had this question, but it was a good question. And I think when we were talking about it and debating it, really walking with them through it, it was interesting to hear their response. It was interesting to hear, oh, okay, now I get it, and see that light bulb go off. That's the cool thing, watching those light bulbs go off.
Right. So let's go ahead and get to another one.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I had this one when I was in the military, and my son asked me this one even though he's only in middle school. So I'm going to ask it here. So how can I keep the Lord's Day holy as a college student? Sunday is usually prime time for cramming. Is that sinful?
Yes, it is sinful to spend your entire day cramming, is what I would say. Yes. And I used to, this is a good question because I also use my personal example in this question. I was blessed to go to the University of Scranton, which is a Catholic university in northeastern Pennsylvania. And my campus had Sunday evening masses. So they had a 7 p.m. and they had a 9 p.m. mass on Sunday evenings. It's pretty hard to miss mass when, because you were out, maybe hanging out a little too late. You can definitely make the 9 p.m. mass. So more often than not, when I was in school, I went to mass because the times were, amenable, but also because, I knew that it was sinful to miss mass. And so with that being said, I would just challenge people who might be thinking, I don't need to go to church this Sunday, to say, is your reason for missing mass a grave reason, right? Like, is it a grave reason? Is it, or is it something under the point where, like, okay, are you going to have to take care of somebody else, or whatever those things that the church says it's okay to do to miss mass. If it doesn't fall in those categories, if it doesn't fall in grave matter or taking care of elderly or sick people that as a caregiver, then you really ought to be at mass. And here's the thing that I found interesting when I was researching this question. I looked at the catechism, and it mentioned that what we should do, and I don't have the quote right in front of me, but but it's what we should do if we miss Mass is to gather as a family or groups of families for an extended period of time and worship God. So if you're not doing that, that doesn't really meet the criteria. Like it doesn't meet the criteria for worshiping God and giving him, prominence on the day of the Lord's Sabbath, which he asks us to do. So I would just challenge people that thinking about missing Mass, to evaluate your circumstances. I don't think cramming for your next midterm qualifies as grave matter. But I'll leave that up to you to decide whether you consider that grave matter or not.
Bill, you made an important point though when you started answering the question, when you used your personal example, how you talked about how there was all these masses going all the way up to 9 p.m. Really, God's only asking for an hour. I mean, we can go Saturday night even. I mean, whatever the case is, there's really the church gives us so many options that we really have to try hard not to go. Yeah. So there's really like I said, there's really no excuse with so many options that the church gives us.
No, I agree.
Now this next question, Bill, I want to ask this one because it's still one I see in Protestant Catholic debate groups as well. So I don't think it's just a college student thing. But how should I respond when someone says they're not Christian or Catholic because of, quote unquote, all the rules?
I answered this one so shortly in the book. And I said this very, very simply. I said, ask them what rules. Ask them what rules they are referring to. Because, look, I don't mean to be blunt, but here's the thing. Oftentimes, they're making up the rules, and they're thinking about something that really is not the rules of the church. And so if you can call them out on that, and here's the thing, you don't even have to know that is, you don't have to be like the most well-versed person either, right? I can just say, let's research this together, right? Like I think a lot of college students are afraid that when they say, what rules are you referring to? Well, okay, the rule against, not consecrating pickles. That's the reason why we're not allowed to, that's the reason why I'm not becoming, and then you have to go and define that reason why we only consecrate unleavened bread. Like let's research it together. You don't have to know exactly the reason why we only use unleavened bread at Mass. Like let's just go in and research it together. But ask them what rules they're referring to, because oftentimes it's something bogus, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I remember when I was fighting coming into the church, and I used that one time, and like you said, I kind of made up my own thing. I forget, it was something ludicrous. I can't even remember. I think I blocked it from memory just because it's too painful for me to remember. But but so I'll ask one more, and then we'll one more question that you have in the book, and then we'll talk about a couple other things about the book. And this is a very powerful question, and I think one that a lot of people ask. Why does God let bad things happen in our world?
Yeah, and I was really so struck by this question. Originally, when it was put in the book, it said, because we were going through the pandemic, and I wanted to extend the life of the book just a little bit beyond the pandemic. And it said, why did God allow the coronavirus to happen? And this bad thing to happen. And I said, well, I went back the next week and I talked to the kids and I said, well, are you talking about just the coronavirus, or are you talking about other bad things? Like what is the problem of evil here? And
right.
And so they said, of course, yeah, it's not just the coronavirus pandemic. And so when I talked to them about this, I said, it really comes down to love. And I know that sounds super silly, that this is all about love, but it really is. And here's why: because God had to create us with free will to love him, or otherwise love wouldn't exist. Like if we didn't have the choice to love God or not love God, love could not exist, because you can't force somebody to love you, right? I mean, everyone understands that. Like in college, like you're sitting there, you're going, oh, does this, yeah, I want to date this girl. Do they love me? Don't they love me? Like all that kind of stuff, right? So God can't force somebody to love you. Now, here's the crazy thing. Once you say, no, God, I don't love you, like Adam and Eve did in the Garden of Eden, like they said, God, we don't, we're rejecting you. We're not going to follow you anymore. Mm-hmm. Here's the wild thing about that. God said before that to them that they had dominion over all the creatures in the garden, all the created. God gave it to them and said, take care of it. And when Adam and Eve rebelled and said, we're not going to do that anymore, they abandoned their duty to that stewardship. And so therefore creation, all of the rest of creation, follows our lead, whether that's the weather, whether it's, dogs biting us, whether it's, everything follows that our lead, which was, we're rejecting this. So, why do bad things happen in the world? It's because of us, and it's because of sin from a global perspective, from a high perspective. It's because of corporate sin, but to also give people some hope. The reality is that we also probably don't know 100% the drama that God is creating through this battle between sin and virtue. So it really is a wonderful thing to take some time and reflect on your own life and say, if all these bad things keep happening, bad in my own life, like if they all just keep happening, is it because I am being called to go deeper with God and become holier and get closer to God and rid myself of sin? And it doesn't mean that your life is going to be perfect after you become holier. But what it means, I think, is you're going to see through the lens of God's eyes a little more, and realize, oh, you know what? Let me help in this situation. Let me become a helper versus somebody who is destroying. That was my goal, was to not only give them a personal perspective, like, okay, this is through us, but also to let them know, it really is through the fact that we rejected God, that these things do happen. And no answer, if that's a little lacking, no answer is going to, satisfy us until we get to heaven and God goes, hey, this is exactly the reason why I did what I did. None of us get that right answer.
So what kind of, the book's only been out months at this point, but what feedback have you received so far?
I have been blessed to get some awesome feedback about the book. First of all, I thank you for writing an amazing review of it on your website.
My
pleasure. So if you're looking for a great review, you head over to, of course, WilliamHemsworth.com and check that out. But a few other people as well have written reviews for it and just reached out. I was at the Catholic Marketing Network this past month here, and talking with a whole bunch of different people about it, and had a couple people come up to me and say, oh man, this book is so necessary. We need this out there in the church. I had one gentleman who came up to me in regards to his neighbor. His neighbor kid was going off to University of Illinois, which is a secular university. He's like, oh man, I have to give him this. I have to give him a copy of this book because he's going from a private Catholic school to the University of Illinois, and there's just so many challenges. I just got to give him the book. Right. So I think a lot of that kind of feedback about just that this is a necessary book for our times, which, I mean, God's timing is always perfect. So that this is when it was supposed to come out, not in 2012 when I wrote the foreword.
Well, God's providence is amazing. So when it works out, it works out. So where can our listeners get the book? Well, where can they check it out?
Yeah, so the easiest place to do it is right on our website. If you go to patchworkheart.org, you will find the link on our online store tab. You head over to the online store, it'll pop up on the main page for you. You'll see the book cover that says Hearts Burning Within Us there. So you can get a copy of the book. And just, it's pretty reasonable. I'll just say it's $15, to purchase it right off our website. And then there are bulk discounts already built into the website. So if you do purchase more than one copy, there's bulk discounts built in for you, so that you can do this in small groups or whatever you want to do. If you're a campus minister, if you're a college or whatever, we can work on even furthering those discounts for you. But it's already built in for like small discounts.
Yeah, so go to the description. The link to the book is in the description. So just click, follow, check out. I think you really enjoy it. Like Bill said, it's built for those college students. Bill, great work here. Again, the book is Hearts Burning Within Us. And thanks for coming on the show today. I appreciate it.
William, it's always great to be with you. Thanks for doing this live. It was awesome to be live on YouTube with you, man.
Take care.
Yeah, bye now.
Come on. There we go.